It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. It's you and me. And we start off this morning with, breaking news over the last couple of hours. Just hours before the House Oversight Committee was going to assemble to hold FBI Director Wray in contempt of Congress, the FBI agreed to permit members of the Oversight Committee to review an unclassified informant file that allegedly links President Joe Biden to a $5 million bribery scheme. Wednesday evening, Comer canceled the 9 a.m. Thursday vote to hold Wray in contempt. In exchange, the FBI finally agreed to allow the members to review the document, a demand on which Comer insisted from nearly the beginning of the negotiations. After weeks of refusing to even admit that the FD 1023 record exists, the committee stated in a press release the FBI has caved and is now allowing all members of the Oversight and Accountability Committee to review this unclassified record that memorializes a confidential human sources conversations with a foreign national who claimed to have bribed then Vice President Joe Biden. So there you go. That is there. I still have a ton of questions that we'll get to in a minute, but let me just get to the basically what the breaking news is from yesterday on this particular story. Also, the stories out there that the FBI's informant file of the bribery scheme that allegedly links President Joe Biden to his family's business deals in Ukraine. So now the country has come out. It's Ukraine. That's what House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer revealed yesterday. So we now know the country. Now we now know it's Ukraine. And that is really interesting because, as you know, what was the first impeachment about? What was the first impeachment about? As we know, Ukraine. And former President Trump telling Zelensky, look into this. Look into the corruption in your country, including the Bidens. That's why he was impeached. And as Eric and I have stated, that was wrong because there was a legit concern that we even knew from the Obama State Department on it. So we always said the first impeachment was completely and totally bogus. And if this is true, then we know. This would answer the question that Eric and I have talked about for a significant period of time, and that is, why were they so insistent to impeach the president on this? The question would be, did they know that the president was dirty? That would be the question that I would have. Did they know the president was dirty in Ukraine? And in order to deflect criticism of what was actually going on, let us focus, the next 6 months on impeaching the president at that time, which will deflect any type of focus on the fact that this corruption was actually going on. Eric and I have talked about that, before, and now we're told that the allegation here is that it was Ukraine. And we know that's where Hunter Biden worked for Burisma, had, no experience in energy production whatsoever, and he was put on the board. And his father, as vice president, was the head of, the United States relations with Ukraine. And we already know way back from, internal emails from the State Department that the State Department was concerned, very concerned about Biden's son. and what he was doing there, and how the perception there was a conflict of interest. And of course it was. Yes, it is Ukraine, Comer told Just the News. This 1023 involves a business person from Ukraine who allegedly sent a bribe, a substantial bribe, to then Vice President Joe Biden, is the allegation in this. The other thing that had come out, and we had addressed this yesterday, if you were listening to yesterday's show, and we said either Democrat Jamie Raskin is lying or Comer is lying. Because Raskin from Wisconsin came out and said, oh, no. Bill Barr dropped this. Remember that? Bill Barr dropped this. The investigation stopped. Bill Barr said yesterday that is not true. They did not drop it at all. In fact, what they did was, let me just tell you right here, he says, it starts out, thefederalist.com had this, Margot Cleveland. The FBI is attempting a cover-up, and Democrats are doing their bidding by lying to the American people, Representative James Comer told The Federalist. Well, that's what Eric and I wanted to hear. We said it yesterday. Why aren't they accusing him of lying? It's not true. It wasn't closed down, William Barr told The Federalist on Tuesday in response to Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin's claim that the former Attorney General and his handpicked prosecutor had ended an investigation into a confidential human sources allegation that Joe Biden had agreed to a $5 million bribe. On the contrary, Bill Barr stressed, it was sent to Delaware for further investigation. Former Attorney General Barr went on the record with the Federalist following statements Raskin made to the press on Monday afternoon that we addressed on yesterday's show, soon after the attending a closed-door meeting with the House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer and the FBI, in which the lawmakers reviewed the FD 1023 form, summarizing the detailed allegations that then Vice President Joe Biden agreed to accept money from a foreign national to affect decisions. Raskin spoke to the media. What I learned, Raskin claimed, was that the Attorney General Barr named Scott Brady, who was a U.S. Attorney for Western Pennsylvania, to head up a group of prosecutors who would look into the allegations related to Ukraine. After Rudy Giuliani surfaced these allegations, Brady's team looked into the F-1023 and in August determined that there were no grounds to escalate from an initial assessment to a primary investigation, so they called to an end in the investigation. The Maryland Democrat then reiterated his claim that this was under Attorney General William Barr and his handpicked prosecutor, Mr. Brady, who was a Trump appointee. They were the ones who decided, and there were no further grounds for an investigation. Bill Barr said that's untrue. And Comer said Raskin is lying. So there you go. And the other thing is, I was thinking, Eric and I have said, there's really been no pushback on this. You haven't had the FBI never have come out and said that the investigation had stopped, that this was untrue. You really have, Raskin was the first one who came out, and now it's been proven that he's lying to the American public. And by the way, as he did with Russia collusion too. And so Comer came out and said he's lying. And that's good, because we said if they know they're lying, say they're lying. Communicate with the American public, let the American public know what's going on out there. We didn't have it yesterday. I didn't see the story yesterday. I didn't find it anywhere. In fact, only the Federalist has the story about Bill Barr, because Bill Barr talked to them. And I didn't see any. I wonder if it's because competition. I wonder if it's because if it's, Just the News, which is John Solomon. You wonder, well, why wouldn't this be blasted all over Fox? And I couldn't find it on Fox anywhere. So, but Bill Barr said, nope, not true. We didn't stop the investigation. So Raskin lied on it, and it was important to know, because we said yesterday, well, if you look at it, we're not privy to information. Either Raskin's lying or Comer is lying. We now know that Raskin is lying, the Democrats lying. So, and the fact is now we know that the allegation is on Ukraine. So this, but on the whole whistleblower thing, did you see yesterday on the UFO, the whole UFO whistleblower, that the Pentagon came out and said, not true, not true, not true. really immediately after that story came out. Not true, not true, not true. You haven't seen that in this particular case. And we always look at the clues of what will Democrats defend. And so when Raskin came out and said, I've seen it and there's nothing there, it's like, okay, the investigation was ended. Bill Barr investigated. He was making stuff up as he went along. And so the only conclusion you could come to was the Democrat was lying or the Republican was lying. And now we know after Bill Barr's statement that the Democrat and the head of the Democrats of the Oversight Committee, Jamie Raskin, he's the one that's lying on this. And it's important to know that. So it will be interesting to see what comes out after this. I haven't seen, I'll have to see if Raskin responds to it, because Raskin would have to say that that Bill Barr is lying. And I didn't see that yesterday. I did not see that. In fact, I'm going to Google that to see if Raskin has said anything else on it. But you wonder why he would lie like that, because if it was said, it's either one way or the other. And if Bill Barr speaks on this, as we said yesterday, it's over at that point. And Bill Barr, no, that didn't happen. So important to know in these cases who's lying and who is not. So going to get very, very interesting. We got a great show ahead today. So much to talk about. Just some great analysis on the wildfires out of Canada and the claim from Democrats about climate change. Really incredible, editorial in the Wall Street Journal. As we've said, the editorial page in the Wall Street Journal is actually, at times, we've said a news page and not an editorial. And the facts that they give out is that wildfires, and we'll get to the specifics of it, but wildfires in so many cases, because the Democrats won't have, they just won't do proper forest management, outdoes any of the other mitigating things that they attempt to do to stop CO2 from going into the atmosphere, that way more is put in with these wildfires. And the other thing is, I do like the one. Believe me, it was sarcasm, but it was hilarious. And it said, Canada needs to pay reparations to the United States now. Environmental reparations from Canada to the United States. So we'll get to that one. The Army Secretary said woke military criticisms are hurting recruiting. Well, then stop being woke. What is the latest on a couple other things here? Mike Pence in. Mike Pence in. Christie and Trump going back and forth. Christie calling Trump childish for fat jokes. Said, is he serious about this or whatever? So we will get to that and more. Your calls, too. Great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
Every driver knows the cost of replacing tires is a major expense. What if you could save on tire costs without sacrificing performance or safety? Consider retreads, a sustainable, cost-effective way to rack up your miles. The lower price tag of retreads might make it feel like you're sacrificing performance, but many of the quality retreads available today have proven to perform comparable to new tires. Plus, dependable tire performance also has to do with choosing the right retreads for your application and adopting a tire maintenance routine. Determining the position in which your retreads will be placed and what application they'll be used in should be the first steps you take when purchasing tires, whether new or retreads. This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Yeah, I mean, some of the pictures of the smoke in the Northeast, just unbelievable. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and my brother was over, and they live in Western New York. And he said, it's really, really bad. And you can smell it. And, wow, it's just, and they, some of my friends, my conservative friends up there, are they going to mandate masks? Well, they did advise, masks for but not the paper masks, because of the particulate matter in the air. And so that was some fun going back and forth with my friends up there. New York City, wow. Some of the pictures. Yeah, it looked like a dystopian nightmare. It's just pretty intense. And I know what, 2 of the airports up there closed because of it. So, yeah, just amazing. So we'll get to some of that. Also, we'll get more into the specifics of it, but this was just to show you how brainwashed, how adults are brainwashing kids. Listen to this. This is a survey that was taken by the Cato Institute, a national survey that they took. It found that 30% of people between 18 and 29 years of age support government surveillance inside of their own home. Nearly a third, because you wonder, well, what type of surveillance are they talking about? Smart thermostats? No, that's not what we're talking about. Nearly a third of those 18 to 29 support the government installing surveillance cameras in every household in order to reduce domestic violence, abuse, and other illegal activity. 30%. This figure is more than twice as large as that for the general population, 14%. Now, I have to ask this question. How the hell can we live in the United States of America and even 14% of people, who are these people? Who are these people who believe that the government should put cameras in every home to monitor your activities every day? Excuse my language, what the hell are they thinking? Wow. The Cato survey asked about support for at-home government surveillance to see if this view correlated with approval of the central bank digital currency, because it was the Cato Institute's recent 2023 national survey on the central bank digital currency yielding troubling findings about younger Americans' affinities for government surveillance within their own homes. And so the one survey was done. They did their survey of their own and found out that, yeah, racial minorities ordinarily skeptical of law enforcement are more likely to endorse cameras in the home monitoring your daily activities. %33% of African Americans, 25% of Hispanics, 11% of Asian Americans, 9% white Americans. Marginally, more Democrats are supportive than Republicans, 17% to 11%. Who in the world calls themselves a Republican and believes that cameras should be monitoring your daily activities inside of your home?
Hi, I'm Eric Harley. Join me today through Saturday, June 10th, for the 41st annual Shell Rotella Super Rigs at Camplex in Gillette, Wyoming. All the details are at redeyeradioshow.com.
Hello. I'm Gary McNamara. As you just heard there, Eric has the morning off, so it's you and me, and it's all over the place Thursday. I will say, though, and it's every single day. Every single day, we're about to go on the air, and I've said it, I say it out loud, but I always say it about a minute before we go on the air. It's like, I'm not ready. There's just too much stuff. And so I think it was last week that we decided to come up with All Over the Place Thursday, just because there's so much stuff that we'll be jumping topic to topic to topic to topic because there's so much to talk about out there. But getting back to what we started out the show with, what we got from James Comer yesterday, the head of the House Oversight Committee, is that there will not be contempt of Congress proceedings that will start this morning against FBI Director Wray. They came to an agreement where the members of the House Oversight Committee can go and look at the FBI report on the allegation that exists in the FBI that Joe Biden took a bribe from Ukraine. That came out yesterday for the first time, that the bribe was from Ukraine. And there's still questions that I have. Some of them have been answered. We now know that it was Jamie Raskin, the Democrat head of the Oversight Committee, who lied 2 days ago after the meeting when he came out. And we're familiar with this. Adam Schiff did the same thing. Adam Schiff, when it came to Russia collusion, would constantly lie to the American public as to what intelligence actually said. And Jamie Raskin came out yesterday or 2 days ago and said that that Barr had Bill Barr, that this was an investigation done under Bill Barr and his federal attorney, and they shut the investigation down. Bill Barr came out yesterday and said that's not true. So as we had said, if you listened to the show yesterday, we said, okay, what are the possibilities? We don't know. Either Comer's lying or Raskin is lying. We now know that Jamie Raskin is the liar here in this. And so you wonder why. The question would be, why would he lie? Why would he lie when this would be so easily disproven? And we didn't know on yesterday's show, there wasn't a story out there that Bill Barr had commented on it, because he commented on it apparently hours afterwards. And the story, I believe, from the Federalist came out yesterday where they said, no, we've talked to Bill Barr. And he said, nope, not true. Not true. So the question is, Jamie Raskin lied. Why did he lie? Why did he lie to the American people? He's on the Oversight Committee. He's the head Democrat on the Oversight Committee. Why did he lie? Why did he put in such an obvious lie that could be refuted so quickly by Bill Barr? That, the investigation hadn't ended. Because that's what, you look at what he said, and it was like, okay, if Bill Barr comes out and says, yeah, we stopped the investigation because there was nothing there whatsoever, well, that would impact the credibility of Comer. Like, okay, what are the Republicans doing here? But Comer also came out, and we had stated yesterday, we said he needs to come out, and say he lied. And he did yesterday, that the Democrats are lying on this, and Jamie Raskin lied. There's still the question, and I don't know how big of a question this is going to continue to be. There's, number one, I didn't see anything again yesterday on the fact that the FBI believes that the actual informant's life is in danger, that he could be killed if he is unmasked because of the investigation into the Biden family that Representative Luna said the other day. And I didn't see any comment on yesterday on it. I might have missed it. But I didn't see it. Now, I got up at 10 o'clock, so I wasn't able to look at everything. But if I just put her in again, Representative Luna, let me see what comes up here in Google. Okay. Nope, everything is still 2 days old. Everything on that's still 2 days old. Let me see if there's any update on it. Nope, 2 days. Yep. Nope, I don't see anything on it. There's a Washington Post story, analysis, Luna gets media attention with dire baseless claims, but I can't see what it's about. It's behind a paywall. But I haven't seen any Democrat come up and say that. And I didn't see Comer make a mention of it either yesterday. And then Daily Mail UK, Biden whistleblowers fear for their lives. Republicans say FBI won't hand over alleged $5 million bribery document because key informant safety could be in jeopardy. I haven't seen an article written like that in the United States. House Republicans say the FBI is violating a subpoena to turn over an alleged bribery document. This is from 2 days ago, because the original informant's life could be in danger if they are unmasked. Now, they say Republicans, and I don't see anything in this article as I scan down it, and I'll read it during the break more, that says anything about Marjorie Taylor Greene told the DailyMail.com that the Biden whistleblower in the alleged bribery scheme is now afraid someone could kill them if someone found out who they are for bringing up potentially dangerous. Okay, so you've got her. You've got two Republicans then that have come out and said that, at least. And so that's why they use the word Republican. I've not seen Comer state it, which is just weird. Why wouldn't she state it? Or excuse me, why wouldn't he state it? And so, okay, they got Luna and her are the two that have said it. And it's important. Comer should come out and say, yeah, that's true. That's what we learned. So that's the first part. The second part is, well, I guess now the contempt hearing isn't going to happen, so this will probably disappear. The second part would be, why did they need it in person? Now, they're not going to be able to have the document in front of them. Apparently, Republicans believe that just having the entire Oversight Committee having a chance to look at the actual document will make whatever point they're trying to make, because that was our point all along. If Comer and Grassley have seen the document already, and I don't mean for when they saw it when it was brought to Capitol Hill. I mean, they said before they knew it. This is a story from last week where Ray wasn't going to allow them to see it. And as Comer said, they never acknowledged it even existed, but sort of changed their minds when when they told Ray, we've already seen the document. So I've been confused all along as to why they needed it, why they wanted it in person, and when they didn't get it in person, the contempt charge, was put forward. And I don't know. Maybe somebody will ask that question to them. But this thing, now that we find out it's about Ukraine, this just totally expands everything, the scope of this, because this goes right back to Hunter Biden. I was reading this here, Hunter Biden and then, Joe Biden in Ukraine. And I was just going through a little while ago, looking through a bunch of different articles, and this one comes up. And this is about the fact that the federal prosecutors have let Trump's lawyers know that they're investigating him. And this article by Joel Pollack in Breitbart.com is indicting a former president over nonsense is playing with fire. Reports are circulating the federal prosecutors are about to ask a grand jury to indict former President Donald Trump over his handling of classified documents after leaving office. If those reports are true and prosecutors do move against Trump, it would be the first time in American history that the government had prosecuted the leading opposition candidate. It would also destroy public faith in the rule of law and voters' trust in democracy. The documents charges are incredibly weak. From what has been reported publicly thus far, the president has full declassification authority, and there is no formal procedure for declassifying documents. Breathless claims of national security secrets, even nuclear codes, being brought to Trump's estate at Mar-a-Lago turned out to be fantasies. Prosecutors may fall back on charges of obstruction of justice, which seem to be just as speculative. The double standard is glaring. The Department of Justice let Hillary Clinton evade charges relating to her handling of classified materials. In that case, she kept an illicit private email server in her own home, possibly to hide corrupt fundraising efforts for the Clinton Foundation, erased it, had her staff smash phones on which her emails were stored rather than turning the data and documents to the Department of State. President Joe Biden himself, who called Trump's handling of classified documents irresponsible, took files with him when he left the Obama administration. As vice president, he had no declassification authority, but stored classified documents in the private garage of his home, to which his drug-addicted foreign-dealing son had access. He also kept unauthorized boxes of files at the Penn Biden Center, funded by the Chinese. Biden even took documents with him when he left the U.S. Senate and left them in archives at the University of Delaware, that the University of Delaware mysteriously kept sealed until the FBI finally, after much public criticism, searched and seized. It may not be possible to indict a sitting president, but in the case of President Biden, he appears to have benefited from years of protection on other more serious charges as well that allowed him to get elected in the first place. Biden was never targeted by an FBI raid like a dangerous criminal the way that Trump was last year when agents arrived at Mar-a-Lago with weapons drawn. Attorney General Merrick Garland, who promised not to let politics affect the Department of Justice, appointed a special counsel for the Trump allegations and the Biden documents, but not the broader Biden family allegations, just the latest example of partisanship at the agency. If Trump is indicted, Republicans will unite behind him, which may be what the Biden administration wants, believing Trump would be easier to defeat than his rivals, but that is just the beginning. The Department of Justice, which has never apologized for targeting Trump in 2016 and the years thereafter, will have completely discredited itself by targeting him again, not just in the eyes of Trump supporters, but in the eyes of the world. When Democrats tried to impeach Trump, they repeatedly declared that no one is above the law, but no one is beneath it either. They called Trump's indictment in Manhattan in April unprecedented, and so it was, not because of Trump's conduct, but because no other president or presidential candidate has ever been subjected to that kind of abuse, surveillance, and harassment that Trump has over what inevitably were petty allegations. Trump was impeached the first time because we were told he tried to have his leading opponent investigated. Now Biden and Garland are doing that. And while Trump's suspicions of Biden's corruption were well-founded in Ukraine, and after yesterday's news, maybe even more, and have serious national security implications, Trump is being accused of misplacing dinner napkins. Indicting him for this would open a Pandora's box and unleash passions that will not be easily controlled. That is true. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. As we said the other day, the one thing that I believe Democrats will go after to try to separate, and who knows what they'll come up, what the special counsel will say on Biden. But when CNN came out with the story, which even I did not see Trump come out and say it wasn't true, where they said they have a tape where Trump is acknowledging that he has this is after he was out of office, that they have video of him stating that he has that he has a classified document in his hand, implying he did not declassify when he left the office. I believe that's what they will use against him for obstruction of justice. That he knowingly had it, he knowingly knew it, and that was the obstruction of justice. I believe if that is true, and it's interesting that I didn't see anybody deny it from the Trump camp, that's what the special prosecutor will use in order to get a grand jury to indict. Say, he knew, therefore go after him. That's my guess on it. And they'll try to differentiate it and say, well, we didn't have that on. We didn't have Biden admitting on video that he had classified documents.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Thank you for being here. All over the place Thursday is what it is. Got to get the day right first. So we're going to be all over the place this hour because there's just so many things to talk about here. Join in if you want. The one thing that I saw yesterday, I saw an interview with an analyst from CNBC. And you know the whole, I won't talk about my own golf game, but the merger between the Saudi Golf League and the PGA here in the United States and the European Tour. He said it would be accurate to say that the Saudis will own the league. That the Saudis will own the PGA, but they don't have voting control of the PGA. I got to see how this thing works out. That the voting membership on the board will still be the vast majority PGA, but the vast majority of the funding, which means if you have vast majority of the funding, you technically own the league. But you own the league, but you don't have control of the league. That will have to be explained further to somebody like me. And the thing is you know, and if that's true, it's because they want legitimacy. And we said this yesterday when it came to this entire thing, because there's an uproar. I saw that Congress is talking about taking away the PGA's tax-exempt status. I saw also on CNBC where they came out and said in this new venture they will be for profit. So that point may be moot. I was going back and forth with a couple of people that I know yesterday that are pretty well informed, and they said they saw that too, but still they're not sure if it's going to be for profit or non-for-profit in the golf. My point yesterday, and I'll state it again because I think it's extremely important. If you fear Saudi Arabia and their influence in the world, and you don't like the fact that they are attempting to become mainstream while still having a royal family that controls a country to the point where the crown prince can be involved in setting up a conspiracy to murder a reporter, and that is unacceptable to you, as we stated. What the first question is, ever since World War II, when the Allies got in bed with the Russians, with the Soviet Union. There's always been this thing, okay, you have a worse enemy, so you become allies with the enemy that is not as bad of an enemy as the even more evil enemy. And that's something on a case-by-case basis that you can get 20 different opinions on. You know, we deal with Saudi Arabia not because we agree with them, but we view them as less of a danger than other countries in the Middle East. And so you use them as your surrogate to project your nation's interests. And that's one thing. The other thing is, okay, do you personally do business with them? It's a moral issue. Do you do business with them? As I said yesterday, I'm not a golfer, but if the Saudi fund bought our show, when my contract ended, I would be gone. And I can speak for Eric here. I know Eric would be gone too. I would not want that brand. Everything is a brand. I would not want that brand. And other people think differently. That's what I would do. Not virtue signaling, just telling you what I would do. Knowing my history of what I have done in my career, where people have thrown better money at me and I went, nah, I don't care. And I don't. I've never been, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. Both Eric and I have been offered better money to do other things in our in our careers, and we both turned them down. It's like, no, don't want to do it. It's the way we are. I want to do what I want to do. I want to have my own brand. And one of the things goes back to very early on in my career when I was when I worked in New York, and Nightline did this topic about, it was a racial topic, whatever, and they were the local media there was trying to portray that it's a racist society and everything else, and I went, no, it wasn't, and it gets into a long thing, but the Nightline interviewed me for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours they interviewed me, and they took 4 seconds of me and took it out of context. And I said, from that point, I'll never do that again. I'll only do an interview if it's live. I will never allow anybody to edit what I say and make it seem that I have the opposite opinion of what I actually held. And Nightline did that to me, and I just would never do it again. I remember one time where I was offered a lot more money to go to a radio station from someone who at that point was considered the number one person in radio, who told me point blank, do you understand the money you can make? I can make you the next Howard Stern. I said, no, I don't think so. I remember telling my mom the story when it was going on, and this person kept calling me and wanting me to become the next Howard Stern. My mother was just very silent. I'll never forget. God bless her soul. Mom's looking at me, just looking at me. I'm like, what? And she goes, well, I'm just waiting to hear the end of the story. I'm just trying to find out how much my son will sell his soul for. I remember bursting out laughing. Mom, I'm not taking it. But only mothers can have that look where you go, what? I'm just wondering what my son will sell his soul for. I told that story to my dad yesterday, and he just got the biggest kick. He had heard it before, but we got into it, and I said, well, you remember the story about this? And when Mom said to me, I want to see how much my son will sell his soul for. It's just what I would do, and it's not virtue signaling. It's just what I do. I've never – when I watched Moneyball, and you had the part where Billy Beane said, I went for money once. I'll never let money decide where I go. Doesn't mean that you don't want to make money and be comfortable in your life. It means money doesn't dictate. You actually can't be bought. That's the thing. And there's people say, well, anybody can be bought. What if somebody offered you $1 billion? I don't care. I don't. I never have. Well, I will say this. Nobody has offered me $1 billion. Eric's trying to get there by being a political consultant, but so far, Eric has no takers. He started back in 2012 offering his political consulting services for, I think, $1 million, and quickly with no one coming after him, just kept escalating his price up to like $1 billion. I said, Eric, you got to get some offers first. I mean, you just can't raise it to $1 billion. So that's the personal side of it, but that really doesn't matter. What you would do or what I would do doesn't matter. It's what we do as a country or a society. But if you're against the influence and you're against the Saudis attempting to mainstream themselves with money, and that really is your major concern, well, then you should be for the United States going after all of our oil and natural gas. Because we saw it during the Trump administration. We had more control than we ever had over world oil prices. The Saudis came out knowing when fracking, this probably goes back 10 years ago, when fracking was well known and the United States started pumping, it was like, whoa, man, the reserves we have are unlimited now here in the United States, and we have much more than Saudi Arabia does. The government of Saudi Arabia came out and said, we're going to have to diversify. We're going to have to become more tolerant. We just can't depend on oil. We need to diversify our economy, which means, and they said it, which means we have to be more accepting towards other cultures, because you can't do free trade unless you're more acceptant of other cultures. You have to deal with them each and every day. You're both looking for your own self-interest. So you write deals, you communicate with people, you socialize with people, you have to open up your society, and they said that. And the main reason was the United States and the ability to become the world's #1 energy producer by a long way. And we have decided not to do that. We have decided to commit economic, energy, and national security suicide by pretending, just like the Democrats pretend that a biological man can be a biological woman if the biological man says so. They're also pretending that we can run this entire grid on solar and wind. And it's a delusion. And so you ask yourself, why would you do that? Well, the Saudis look at us and go, these people are idiots. So we can do whatever we want. We've got the money. You want to stop their influence? You want to stop them from having as much ability to mainstream that, they are who they are not? Take away the money. How do you take away the money? Blow them out of the water with the United States energy potential. That's what you do. But we won't do that. So we're penny wise and dollar foolish. Everybody goes crazy over the Gulf. When you look at, okay, the solution actually is over here. And as to the actual Gulf part of it, I just, like I told you, I wanted to, just because I'm in the media, I watched it and I couldn't watch. The one time I turned it on for the longest was about, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And there was just music blasting all over the place on the golf course. And it got to be offensive. I was like, I hate sports where it's been taken over with other entertainment. Where the announcer is screaming at you in an NBA game now. It's just, the game is secondary. It's the entertainment experience. It's like, and people want the music all the time. Well, I go to a basketball game to watch a basketball game. I turn on golf to watch golf. I don't turn on a concert to watch a basketball game, and I don't turn on a concert to watch a golf match. And the other thing is, just for the sport itself, the team concept means nothing to me. The team concept and the focus of live on the team concept is just, to me, dumb. Team concept, I like a couple times of the year, which is, once a year, the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup. And, those team matches are great, the United States versus the world and the United States versus Europe. That I can get into. Doing it every week, where having different teams is meaningless to me. Golf is an individual sport. That's what drives it. The individual personalities, everybody going after everyone. Whether it's Jack Nicklaus, whether it was Gary Player, whether Tiger Woods, whether it was Phil Mickelson, it's those individual personalities that win. Perfect example, what's his name? Michael Block a few weeks ago. Comes out of nowhere. It's that individual, and it's the individual story. I have no idea why they believe the team concept is something that America or the world cares about when it's just, 4 different people. It's not a country, just 4 different people playing 4 different people, and there's a team score. I don't care. So, but yeah, that's it there. But if you want to change it, there's a way to do it, and golf isn't the way. Now, since all of this has happened, as I've said overall, I watch a lot less sports than I did, and it started probably with the whole NFL thing a couple of years ago. I think the NFL has made some strides to move away from that, as everybody has from Black Lives Matter, because they realized they got burned on it. And even the pride stuff. You had the National Hockey League come out and say, well, we may be backing off on all the pride stuff. And now with everything going on right now, you really wonder whether sports wants to get involved anymore with anything, political. But even though I know they've changed direction slowly in sports on it, once I stopped watching, I just really don't watch a lot of sports anymore. I can't figure it out. I've talked about this before. I actually cannot break it down. Outside of what happened a couple years ago, I don't know. Basketball, it's not as much of a team sport. I don't like the one-on-one. Football, I still love football, but I just don't watch it much. Hockey, I still love hockey, still don't watch it much. So, and golf, like I said, stopped watching it as much as I used to. I watched some of the majors this year, but not wall-to-wall as I used to. When the majors started, I was watching the Golf Channel from Monday for every single interview and all that. It was on in the background. Don't do it anymore. So, all right. 866-90 Red Eye.
Managing time is key. Successful owner-operators know that simply running hard is not enough. If it were that easy, anyone could do the job and expect the profits to roll in. It generally pays to slow down. There is a trade-off in higher costs, not to mention the increased risk for driving fast. If driving slower takes time away from you, you could find some of the ways to get it back. Never take time off during the last 2 weeks of the quarter or the last week of the month, when freight typically is abundant. Sometimes it works to your advantage to look for loads that take you through home rather than to home. The latter can interrupt your revenue stream and require additional time to get back up to full speed again. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella with advanced synthetic technology. For more information, go to overdriveonline.com to the Overdrive's Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on Business 101 and many other topics.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. So Pence is in officially. I did see where he said, "Look, I shouldn't have had classified documents at my place. Biden shouldn't have had them, and Trump shouldn't have had them. Don't go after Trump. Don't do it." And that was interesting yesterday. I found that he did that in an interview on CNN. As to his announcement that he's running for president. Again, why? And that's not being sarcastic. As I've said, any of the Republicans would be better than any Democrat. But when you're looking at it, you're saying, all right, it's more of a sort of a political analyst opinion, what are you offering that's not being offered out there already? You know, I know the Democrats. No, I know it was Chris Christie. I know it was Chris Christie who said yesterday, everybody who's running is the same as Trump, but they believe they're not as bad. Like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean you're not like you're like Trump, but you're not as bad? Well, what does that mean? He didn't explain what it meant, Christie, yesterday, because all I care about is the issues. That's what I care about. Where do you stand on the issues, and what do you plan on doing? And are you really serious about doing something on it? But his campaign isn't going to go anywhere. Neither Christie's or Pence's.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Hawley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Let's just go over the whole classified document thing for all three for Pence, for Biden, and for Trump. Just go through it all here. Pence, as we know, he's the one that after he went after Biden said, wonder if I have anything. So at that point, that's when he checked for classified documents, and he let the FBI or whoever it was, whoever he had to call, he let them know. And so in his particular case, he was never president of the United States, so he can't declassify. He can't make the claim that he declassified because he was vice president, not president, and the vice president doesn't have that. So that does up it to a more possible serious allegation and crime. For Biden, the same thing. Except Biden had been doing it since he was in the Senate. They found classified materials. And in Biden's case, they found them all over the place, not just in one location, but in a number of locations, including in the garage at his private residence, and then inside the private residence, separated from like the files they were going to be in. They found them like around the house where Hunter Biden was. I think James Comer had made the allegation once. He believed that one of the top secret classified documents related to the Ukraine. And I was thinking about that. I went, I wonder if all this relates to the new thing about Comer saying that the alleged bribe is Ukraine, and does that tie it back to the classified document that was found at the house where Hunter Biden had stayed? Now, that without question is something that should be prosecuted. That would take it to a different level completely. And there'd be 2 points here. And by the way, The View, I'll never forget on The View, they said, well, even if Biden took it as vice president, he's president now and can declassify it, so there's no problem. No, it doesn't work that way. It's the crime committed at that time. But if a classified document was used in some way, now I don't know if it's the same. If when the Republicans, when Comer said it, that they believe one of the documents that was found at the home where Hunter Biden rented, and it was separate from like the boxes of files, it had been taken out. If that was used in any way that relates to the alleged bribery scheme, that's jail time. And that is where you would go after a president for that. Number one, the bribe as vice president. Number two, using classified documents in the enterprise to get a bribe. And because you could look at what there was intent to take that classified document because somehow it gave you leverage and a bribe. I think most people would agree with that. If you take the names out of it and the political party out of it, if you just state that particular crime or that particular behavior, most people would say, yeah, that would be criminal. In Trump's case, even though I believe the Democrats are going to say, we have this tape where Trump admits that he has this classified document. Now, I don't know the context. Nobody does. I haven't seen the Trump campaign or the Trump people deny that this tape exists or he said this, but CNN reported it last week that Trump makes it clear that he's holding on to a classified document. He's no longer president. And he says, "This, I've got this classified document here." And what the article was stating was that would take away his defense that he declassified. It may have not gone through the process, but he declassified it before it left the White House. That would take away that claim because he was claiming at the time after. Now, you could look at that and you could say, all right, well, that makes it a crime, except for one thing. What's missing? His intent. What's the intent of taking the document? And you get into gray areas there as to, okay, what is the official procedure? Because we still have never seen that. We've never seen what the official procedure is for a president declassifying documents. Now, the president said, well, I can just do it in my head and not tell anybody. I doubt that would hold up in court. But if he said, I am declassifying this and people heard him, you may be in gray areas there as to, because once he says it's declassified, then it's declassified. So if he gave blanket, and if any president did that, it might not be the right thing to do. But if they do that, they have the authority to do that, would be the point under law. But with Trump, you still have to get to what was the intent of wrongdoing. If you're going to prosecute in these particular cases, you need to have what the intent, what was the illegal intent. Because when we see that really no president gets prosecuted for this, the exception would be, and I gave the exception, is if the Biden classified documents, number one, he was vice president and had no way to declassify any of it. They were found in multiple places. He had been doing it for decades. And the Republicans claim that they're looking into one of those classified documents and whether it was related to any wrongdoing in Ukraine. And now that we know that the document of the bribery is from Ukraine, if those two are related, well, then that top secret classified document, if that was used, this is all hypothetical because it's all we have right now. We don't have all the information. But if that was used in order to help the bribe along, then the Department of Justice should prosecute on that one. And the president at that point Biden would have to be impeached because you have the intent then. You have an illegal intent to use the classified document. With Trump, you still don't have the intent. Spite? Is that an illegal intent at that point? No, I don't think anybody sees it. Now, after what Hillary Clinton did as Secretary of State, and again, she has no authority to declassify at any time while being being Secretary of State or not being Secretary of State. But she took a server and put it in her own home in order that the Freedom of Information Act couldn't get a hold of everything that she was doing. So she was attempting to hide. That was the one law she broke. She was attempting to evade the Freedom of Information Act by putting a server in her own home and knowing, as the analysis came out afterwards, foreign unfriendly governments had access to her computer and got a ton of top secret documents, is the belief. That's where she violated the Espionage Act by doing it and knowing that top secret classified material would be flowing through a server not within the closed system. She destroyed evidence, smashed cell phones, erased emails, and she was not prosecuted. And so that's the problem. That's where the public will look at what's going on here. And then you add everything else into it. You add in now, the first impeachment on this whole thing that, relates to corruption in Ukraine. And now, as we have always stated, there was a legit concern because there was a legit concern in the Obama administration. My God, what is his son doing? We put him as the point person. Joe Biden is a point person, and his son joins the board of Burisma? Are you kidding me? And we had talked about how the Obama State Department was extremely concerned about that because the perception of wrongdoing was there. So when Trump talked to Zelensky and said, you need to look into this possible corruption, immediately the Democrats said, you're trying to interfere in the election. We're going to impeach you. Well, it's been pointed out today, Democrats are doing the same thing. They're going after a political enemy because they believe that he might have broken the law in a law that they've broken. And that's where you're going to look at it. That's where people are going to look at it and go, this is two-tier justice here at this point. And the Hillary Clinton situation does horrible damage. Look, Comey even admitted she broke the law, but said his argument was no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute this because, well, we've never seen where it's been done before. Well, that's because a majority of State Department people before her, never put a server in their own home. They never committed such a crime before to evade the Freedom of Information Act. That's why never happened. Well, and for most of the history of the United States, Secretary of States didn't have computers that could store that kind of stuff. So that's the problem. And that's why it's not going to be accepted. And that's why it's going to be a huge problem if they go after Trump and there isn't new information. Now, hypothetically, if there's information that Trump took the top secret things and then I'm trying to think of what a conspiracy would be and then gave it, can we combine how somehow the live golf with this? I'm trying to think of what would be criminal wrongdoing. But if they could say that Trump took these classified documents in order to give them to foreign enemies and her national security, well, then, yeah, he should be prosecuted. As far as we know, there's no evidence that happened at all. Was there a back and forth debate going on? Might it have gotten angry at points? May have Trump disagreed and things got heated? Yeah. But what was the intent? Because that seems to be, because it doesn't seem like, we know the intent of Hillary was to avoid the Freedom of Information Act, which is against the law. So she broke the law in order not to follow the law. That would seem to be, as we stated back then, that would seem to be the level in which you, and especially somebody who's not a president, she's not a president, she doesn't have the ability to declassify, that would be the point where you prosecute her. And it would also be if you can prove that the document that was at the house, Biden's house, where his son was, and Comer had said, we believe that one of the classified documents may have been involved in a transaction they had with Ukraine, then that would be a huge problem, and that should be prosecuted too. But if you're just saying he had it in his home and he debated and didn't want to hand it over, and even at one time he said, "Well, this is classified." I haven't seen was he saying it is? Was he just saying, "Yeah, this is a classified document," and didn't say, "But I declassified it"? That's the problem. And with the record of the Department of Justice, of what they did in Russia collusion, which is a complete con job, complete setup by the Hillary campaign, with no accountability except for one FBI agent, what do? 866-90-RED-I.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the top of the hour. Hey, sometimes I like lawyers, sometimes I don't. A perfect example coming up. This is part of the confirmation hearings of federal judges yesterday. There was just a great back and forth between Josh Hawley and a federal judge candidate nominated by Biden. It was just classic stuff, and it was about the COVID lockdowns. You want to hear it? That coming up. Plus the wildfires. AOC trying to take advantage of it, and Biden also stating that this is why we need to pass the Green New Deal. Some interesting statistics about wildfire and climate change coming up. You'll want to hear it.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. All right, where do we go? How about some audio? Let's start with some audio here. This is really, I guess it's current event because it happened yesterday, but it didn't get a lot of publicity at all, but it was still greatness. This is Josh Hawley and a back and forth with Lauren Alicon, nominee to be the United States District Judge for the District of Columbia, in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing yesterday. And this is where, he's nominated judges, and so the Senate asks them quite a few questions. This is on the COVID lockdowns, and this was on when she defended this judge who wishes now to be a federal judge, when she was apparently a lawyer, or she would have been working for the District of Columbia, defended Bowser on the fact that churches need to be closed down. This is just this greatness. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of the nominees. Judge Alicon, I think the last time you and I visited, it was before the Homeland Security Committee, and I asked you a number of questions there, you, including some for the record, you answered those, which I appreciated. One question that I ask you, and I ask every nominee actually on that committee and this one, is whether or not the nominee has ever litigated against a religious liberty claim. Usually the answer to that's no. In your case, you answered yes, and you listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cases over a period of years, actually, in which you have litigated against individuals or churches' religious liberty claims. So let's just talk about a few of those, if we could. Let's start with some of your work during COVID. Case you list here, Capitol Hill Baptist Church versus Bowser. Do you remember that case?
Yes, Senator.
You remember working on that case?
Yes, Senator.
This was a case involving the district's lockdown policies that shut down churches in the district. Is that correct?
It concerned litigation over provision of the lockdown policies. The policies restricted all types of activity in the district.
All types of activity in the district?
Yes, Senator.
Did it restrict mass protests in the district?
Well, it restricted activities that one normally expected, including work, going to stores. It also did include these provisions that were challenged concerning churches.
So it exempted unusual or unlikely activities that's in the statute, that's in the ordinance?
When the mayor was enacting these orders at the outset of the pandemic, I think she was trying to be as comprehensive as she could, and the order did restrict a number of daily activities of district residents.
But it exempted mass protests?
I don't believe it said anything one way or another.
Can you point me to the text where it exempted mass protests?
I don't believe it said anything one way or another.
Of course it didn't, because it didn't exempt mass protests, right? You know that.
I think it was silent on the issue because I don't believe it was contemplated by the mayor's office.
So you think that mass protests should be in a different category than religious observances? Is that your position?
I think if there were protests on the book, then the mayor might have thought about that when she was enacting the COVID-19 restrictions. But I think she was trying to protect public health.
So you think it's fine to say to religious people that they are prohibited from gathering outside, wearing a mask, socially distanced. They can't do it. But if you want to come and protest, defund the police, if you want to support that, that's fine. You can gather en masse, person to person, close up, thousands of people. That's okay. That discrimination's okay. That was your position?
Senator, that is not my position.
It was your position. It's what you argued.
I did not write these orders. What I said.
You defended it in court. And you just articulated to me what I take to be your position.
What I was doing in a Capitol Hill Baptist church was defending the mayor, my client, against a constitutional challenge to one aspect of the COVID-19 restrictions. We understood that strict scrutiny applies.
How did that case go for you?
We lost that case.
Why?
It was found that the restrictions did not meet the standard of strict scrutiny.
Meaning they were unconstitutional.
Meaning that they did not survive strict scrutiny, and it's a matter of public record that the District of Columbia did not appeal that decision.
Why? Why were they struck down?
Excuse me, Senator?
Why were the restrictions that you defended struck down as discriminatory? Why were they?
Because they did not satisfy.
Why didn't they?
The court concluded that there were restrictions that were not neutral of general applicability.
Yeah. That's legalese. Why didn't they? Why didn't they on the facts? You know the facts. You were a good lawyer. Why'd you lose?
We lost because applying the strict scrutiny test, the court concluded that the restrictions were not narrowly tailored to serve a compelling governmental interest.
Because?
Senator.
Oh, come on, Judge. Don't make me do this. Do you want me to go through it for you? You lost because Mayor Bowser was going to mass protests herself personally with thousands of people celebrating them. By the way, which is fine. We have the First Amendment in the United States. I want to be clear. That is totally fine. You want to protest? Go for it. I think that's totally fine. That wasn't the problem here. At the same time she was doing that, she was prohibiting churches, religious people, from gathering socially distanced outside wearing masks. And the district court said, you can't do that. That's discrimination. You can't separate people out based on their ideological beliefs or their positions. You can't do that, right? Isn't that what the district court said?
The district court said that
do you agree with it?
Could not survive strict scrutiny.
For those reasons, right? Why are you fighting me on this? I can't figure this out.
I am not fighting you, Senator.
So yes, you agree. That's what the district court said.
That was what the district court concluded.
Do you think they got it right? Did the district court get it right?
The district court, we did not appeal that decision. I think that district court decision is consistent with rulings that we got from the Supreme Court clarifying the application of the religious test to COVID-19 restrictions in Tandon and the Brooklyn Archdiocese.
My time's almost expired, and I know other senators want to ask questions, so let me just very quickly here. Do you think it's wrong to discriminate on the basis of religious faith?
Absolutely, Senator.
Why did you argue that religious services, religious people pose a greater risk of infection than people gathered to argue for defunding the police?
I was representing my client. The mayor and consulting epidemiologists had issued orders that she thought were going to protect public health. It was my role to defend those as a
Why did you make that argument? That seems like a strange argument to me, that religious people are somehow, more infectious than folks who have other ideological positions? I don't get it.
My understanding was the nature of singing and other things epidemiologists thought could transmit COVID at a higher rate.
You didn't put any scientific evidence on the record for it?
Senator, those were fast-moving cases, and they weren't going to full briefing and full summary judgment with a record.
That's not what the district court said. The district court said that you engaged in, and your client engaged in, and you defended discrimination on the basis of religious belief, that you offered no scientific evidence for it, that you pressed these arguments over and over and over without any foundation. Frankly, I'm disappointed that you made those arguments. You can choose what arguments to make. I'm disappointed you made those arguments. I'm disappointed you persisted in defending them here today. And for that reason, among others, I will not support your nomination. Thank you.
That's how you cross-examine. That's how you cross-examine. That's how you ask the right questions. If you've listened to this show, you know that Eric and I get upset all the time. It's like, ask the right questions. Make the right. That was as close to perfect as you can get from Josh Hawley. Completely destroying the judge there, who wishes to become the federal judge for the District of Columbia. It was very simple. Mayor Bowser came out and church services. And remember we talked about that, the church services where people were in their cars. That was another case. But there was the other case where people were in their cars, and I think, did they open their windows, or was it like a movie, the old movie theaters where they were able to hear it inside their vehicles? They were in their cars in a parking lot. That was another case. But this is a case where people were gathering outside, socially distant, with masks on outside. And as she's defending for Bowser is out in massive, in those defund the police protests, out there with the protesters, and the court's looking at this going, what the hell are you doing? Let's put it this way. Josh Hawley ate her lunch. Just amazing. But I saw that yesterday, and I said, I know nobody's probably going to talk about this today. It's not. You don't see it in any of the top 20 stories anywhere. But I went, that's important. What happened during COVID was important, and it's important to bring up over and over again when people that were making legal arguments to discriminate and at the same time be completely and totally hypocritical, that when they wish to move up in the government, as she does, nomination to a federal judge, that it needs to be known what she has defended before, which it was indefensible. And so I thought he did just a great job on that. All right, coming up here, the wildfires in Canada, really interesting about this. Great. Wall Street Journal had some analysis where they said, well, you know something, everything that the left wants to do to get rid of global warming, or excuse me, not global warming, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, global warming gases in the atmosphere, are defeated from their policies on force because of the number of wildfires that happen, because we don't do proper forest management. Then it completely neutralizes anything else that they want to do to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So we'll get to that. And we've got to go to this polling that was done, where nearly a third of adults under 30 years of age support government surveillance in their homes. We're talking about cameras in their private home and government being able to look at the private cameras and monitor what you are doing in your home. 30% of young people, that's 18 to 29, support it. General population, 14%. Democrats are more supportive than Republicans, 17% to 11%. This is where we say there are Republicans out there that call themselves Republicans and are conservatives that certainly are not. How can you be a Republican and believe that government should have cameras in your home to make sure you're not breaking the law in any way? How in the world can you be a Republican? Democrats, I understand, based on the issues today where they're completely and totally delusional on the issues. Republicans? What? But we'll get to the specific way that that question was asked coming up. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. The Cato Institute did a recent 2023 national survey. They do a survey every year. And they found out that younger Americans have an affinity for government surveillance within their own homes. Nearly a third of those 18 to 29 support, and listen to this now when you break it down, the actual way that the question was asked. Quote, they support, quote, the government installing surveillance cameras in every household in order to reduce domestic violence, abuse, and other illegal activity. This figure is more than twice as large as that for the general population. Racial minorities, normally skeptical of law enforcement, are more likely to endorse government surveillance inside of their homes. 33% of African Americans and 25% of Hispanics would be for government-monitored surveillance cameras in their homes, opposed to 11% of Asian Americans and 9% of white Americans. Democrats are more supportive than Republicans about having government-monitored surveillance cameras in every household. 17% versus 11%. Why? Because Democrats very much more likely would like, I don't know, the DeSantis administration to be able to... We can throw Trump in there, too. I just decided to put another name in there since we have a new, what is he now? Is he Mussolini or, wait a minute. Someone called him George Wallace the other day, that he's now George Wallace. That's what I heard. A striking political result is that those self-identified very liberal Democrats are less likely, 9%, than liberal Democrats, 17%, to support government-monitored surveillance cameras in every household. Ironically, progressives who want larger government to circumvent property rights and carry out wealth transfers seem less comfortable with the state violating policy. Perhaps they don't see how empowering the state to engage in the former entails the latter. While the racial and political breakdown is unexpected, the generational results are not altogether shocking. considering the lack of college student opposition to COVID-19 lockdown policies. They documented students' willingness to subordinate themselves to totalitarian invasions of privacy at Dartmouth College with colleagues in a series of videos for the Dartmouth Political Times. There were no demonstrations en masse against stay-in-dorm orders, not even when those who dared to convene outdoors were caught by a task force consisting of a police department, nor were there any large-scale protesting when those students were forced to leave campus and attend classes virtually at home. Given young people's submission to the violations of privacy and autonomy during COVID, supposedly for the sake of safety, dismay at Cato's findings is warranted. Surprise is not. The survey did not ask whether respondents would support surveillance cameras even in the bedroom specifically. Wow. But if you say the home, it would have to include the bedroom, right? 30%. This is where you can legitimately say, what is wrong with people in this country? What is wrong with a significant portion of people? And how the hell have we brainwashed young people where such a great percentage actually believes that it would be a good thing for the government to have cameras to surveil how you live your life inside of your home? What in the hell is going on?
Hi, I'm Eric Harley. Join me today through Saturday, June 10th, for the 41st annual Shell Rotella Super Rigs at Camplex in Gillette, Wyoming. All the details are at RedEyeRadioShow.com.
I'm Gary McNamara. There's where Eric is. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Just fascinated, disturbed, but fascinated by that survey done by Cato, where nearly a third of adults under 30 support government surveillance in their homes. You know, it's interesting when they say, they break it down and they say 33% of African Americans, 25% of Hispanics, 11% of Asian Americans, 9% of white Americans believe that there should be cameras inside of everybody's home monitoring what you're doing to prevent any illegal activity, whether it would be domestic abuse, I don't know, classified documents in your home. But where they say marginally more Democrats are supportive than Republicans, 17% to 11%, they said, how can any Republican be for that unless you're young? I mean, I really wonder if you took my age group, if you took, and I'm a baby boomer, if you take baby boomers, what would that percentage be? Think about it. But why is it? And we talk about a generation that's been, brainwashed, intimidated that a biological male can be a biological female if, you say you are. Which in itself, Eric and I have said this, if they have convinced people to believe that, what can't you get people to believe? What can't you get a minority, even if a significant minority of people, to agree if you can brainwash them or coerce them, intimidate them, bully them into believing that? What can't you do? The other thing that gets to me, though, think about this, 30% of young people Was it 18 to 29? 30% believe that every household should have video cameras in, monitored with the ability of government to monitor you without a warrant. Now, of course, we don't want that. And why not? And this is where you get to the discussion. And in this article in National Review, Jonathan DeCastro actually gets to it. He says he's a part of that generation, of the younger generation. I don't know how old he actually is in National Review, but he brings up the point that we brought. So if monitoring can improve public safety, if only by increasing the perceived cost of misbehavior, why do most people still oppose invasions of their privacy like that? And he goes, the answer is simple. Safety is not the ultimate good. For a human life to have meaning, man must have the ability to choose, even to choose wrongly. Once somebody exercises his autonomy in a way that interferes with another, he must bear the responsibility and consequences of doing so. That's why the criminal justice system exists. I'm reading here from what he wrote. But preemptively violate people's privacy before any crime has been committed is to enter a Minority Report style. And he said, it is disturbing that even a minority of my generation should find this desirable. And but it gets to across the board. We had talked about on a variety of topics. One that just pops into my mind right now is, an automobile. And the way the younger generation, it's really amazing how many young people don't get their license at 16. And how many young people just say, I don't need to drive. It's not an important part. And that befuddles us. We go, really? Because a car, to me, still means freedom. What does freedom mean? Freedom means I can go somewhere now. You actually look at electric vehicles. Forget about the BS of the advantage for climate change or whatever you want to throw in there. It's not as dependable. And that means something to us. It means dependable. I want to go where I want to go right now. You're selfish. No, that's what freedom is. I'm not doing anything wrong by saying I want to jump in my car and go somewhere right now. I want to do it right now. Now, I may only want to do that once a year, but I want to do it when I want to do it, and I want to have the ability to do it. That's important to me. It was great. I actually had a great discussion with my nephew yesterday as we talked about the autonomy of the individual. We were talking about the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party and liberalism versus, being a conservative. That autonomy is extremely important to me. I do my own critical thinking. I do my own. I wish to be in control of my life. I don't want, nor do I need, anybody with a camera. And that's the question that I was thinking here. Is it not that it's not just a want? Do young people believe that they need a camera in their house to keep them from doing wrong? That is a question that has to be asked. Because they're not even saying, put a camera in their house but not mine. They're saying every household, including mine. Why would you do that? And I go back. I wish Eric was here so we could have this discussion because when New York City, remember the whole soda pop where they wanted to limit the amount that you could get? And we were amazed at the number of calls that we got from New York City, people endorsing it and telling us they needed the government to put limitations to control their urges. I'll never forget the one guy that called up and said, not only should they do that for soft drinks, but they should do it for cigarettes because I can't stop cigarettes, and so the government should ban them so I stop smoking cigarettes. And the same thing for soft drinks. And when we saw that 42% of people believed that for adults you should limit the ability to get soft drinks, we had to ask the question, and it applies here. Is there a growing segment of people that believe that they can't be in control of their own life, where it's actually a conscious thought that they go through each and every day, that I can't control my life? I can't control my urges. I can't control my temptations. And the only way that I can do it is to have Big Brother watching me on video? And this is just trying to connect all the dots from everything that we've talked about over the years. Because we'll never forget when that survey was done. That poll was done in New York. It's like 42% or it was 42 or 44% of people said, no, we should control the amount of soft drinks in a serving. What? What are you talking about? I control my own life. You don't need to control my life. You don't need to limit. I can make the right decisions. So if I think that way and you think that way, have we actually brainwashed a younger generation? Have we, by telling them that you're a victim and always be a victim and you can't make it without the government? Eric and I always talk about that Occupy Wall Street. The only thing that came out of that was the whole, the college loan thing. And even today, the whole college loan thing, which, by the way, Biden vetoed what Congress voted on, and the Supreme Court is going to blow it out of the water in all likelihood. But Biden was still, no, we need to help people. Have the Democrats succeeded so well in telling people that they can't make it on their own? We go back to Bernie Sanders when he told college students, you can't make it because of billionaires. Have we victimized people so much where they believe that they are incapable of controlling their own life to the point where they believe that temptation will get to them because they can't control their own urges and their own temptations, and so government must completely monitor them because the only way that they won't do wrong is if government monitors them? Is that where we are as a nation? Are we really there? Are we really at that point? Because with victimization, as we've said, it's very blunt. You can't make it unless government is there to help you. You are helpless. I go on to, Tim Scott on The View. No, you can make it. I can make. No, you're the exception. Every black who makes it is the exception to the rule. Well, then why did they make it and somebody else didn't? There also, it was the labor secretary was before Congress yesterday, and it was, brought up because she had said that, in the past, in 2005, she had said that, basically white supremacy, white privilege controls everything. And he says, you still believe that today? And he started going through the statistics. He said, how come when he talked about India, he talked about the Caribbean, he talked about Cuba, he talked about all, these people come over and they have different color skin and they succeed more than the average American. How does that happen if we are this way? And she couldn't answer the question. She couldn't do it. And so the question is that because liberals are brainwashing young people and saying, you can't make it, you're helpless, you can't do it? Well, if you're being told and brainwashed over and over again, you can't make it, you're a victim, then why even try? What do you have to offer? You have nothing special to offer. You've already been told you can't make it. The adults in your life have told you you can't make it. (866-90-RED-EYE).
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. So, yeah, really incredible, isn't it? Nearly a third of adults under 30 support government surveillance in their homes. You know, but they want them in everybody's home, including their home. And you shake your head because it's so foreign. It's so foreign to us, and you know, we want our autonomy, we want our privacy, and I said we also trust ourselves to do the right thing. And that's what I really wonder. What is the psychology of a person who actually wants a camera in their home to ensure that no law is broken? Have we gotten to the point? Are we in such an immoral society? Have we become a society that is so susceptible to evil and temptation, where there's actually an acknowledgement from young people that we can't trust ourselves, and so we need the government to constantly monitor us? These are the kinds of things I read, and you read it and you think, no, it has to be a lie. This can't be true. But I'm thinking, I'm coming from my point of view of how I was raised. Young people today are raised completely differently. You can't make it. You're a victim. You're never going to make it. You can't make it. You're always going to be a victim. You need to be taken care of. Well, if you treat people like children, do they retain that child mentality? I need to be monitored by a bigger parent, which would be the government. And I ask these questions, and some people may say, well, no, that's not that. Well, then what's the reason? What's the reason that a third of adults under the age of 30 would support government surveillance in their homes? What's the reason? And if it was only I want it in the other person's home, I want the MAGA person over there, I want them constantly monitored, but that's not what they're saying. They want their home monitored too. Who thinks that way? And I still go back to the fact that if Democrats have succeeded in convincing a significant number of young people by brainwashing and intimidation that a biological male can be a biological female if they say so, then what can't you convince young people of? How far can brainwashing go in a modern-day human being in 2023?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Good morning. California is so bad, Superman is leaving. Yep, Superman's leaving. No, we're not talking Chachi. We're talking Superman, Dean Cain. He's following Chachi. He's following Mark Wahlberg. Dean Cain is leaving, put his house for sale, was on Fox News yesterday, said, I'm out, I'm going. By the way, one of the greatest stories I've ever heard about Dean Cain is that, and this story goes back to the 90s, where the Buffalo Bills, Marv Levy told the story, where he had all the rookies in there and said, hey, this is a tough team to make. Understand, we cut Superman. Dean Cain was a football player who tried out for the Bills and got cut. So Marv Levy always used that. You think you can make the team? We cut Superman. Speaking of that, I didn't think about it related. Actually, some good news in sports when you sit there and go, oh, man, I'm just sports. Oh, man, just play the sports and shut up. And just all the politics and everything else. But Damar Hamlin, remember, almost, he did basically die on the field. They're not in pads yet. It's just what do they call it? The OTAs. And but he put the helmet on and practice in full what they're limited to practice in right now, which they don't tackle for the Bills. And apparently he's going to play this year. What an amazing story that is. So, he's back. So, but yeah, Dean Cain leaving. Goes back to our story of yesterday and talking about the owner of two of the biggest hotels in San Francisco saying, nope, sorry, not going to be paying our mortgage anymore. We're defaulting. We're gone. We're out. And we had the call from one of the city workers there who talked about the statistics of people taking public transit there, which is down over half. And, one of the things that we have talked about is we're at the point now, and we've spent a lot of time talking about this, where politics is no longer about the abstract. It's about reality. And for years, conservatives and liberals have argued back and forth that their policies will give you a better future. Well, now where liberalism has been tried, abstract has hit reality and hit it head on. And it doesn't stand up. Liberalism doesn't stand up to reality. You've seen it in Portland, Oregon. You've seen it in New York City. You've seen it in San Francisco. You've seen it in Seattle. You've seen it in Chicago. And that's where we are. And since it doesn't seem that the left wishes to change or moderate at all, and the example is when you look at San Francisco and California and the budget deficit that they're going to have, and they're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in reparations that they can't do. I mean, it's the ultimate in the liberal circular firing squad. They're all delusional, and they're talking about the fact that they know it's delusional, but we still need to have the discussion on it. And even though it's delusional, we need to do it. But we're not going to solve any of the problems that we really have. We're going to live in this delusional state. It's like they've gone from saying, no, what we believe, you'll see in the future that it works. When it doesn't work, they decide just to get delusional and live in a fairy tale world completely about the current situation that they're in, or just ignore reality and say, the pain of the reparations is more important as to than whether we have the ability to actually pay the reparations. Huh? And that's what you're dealing with. And so you look at these cities, and you look at Chicago, had a very liberal mayor, put in a more liberal mayor that believes even more of defunding the police. And you just say, well, they're not learning. I said it in 2018. I said they have to moderate. They can't continue to do this. Their policies are failing. Here we are, 5 years later. It's even worse. I mean, they're completely delusional on the issues now. Completely. And so, you see that story, and the fear is for these states, it's not that, well, everybody isn't going to move. It's not that. That's not even the point. If a significant portion of the rich move, that's all that needs to happen for the state to be taken down economically, because the rich pay so much of the actual taxes in those states. And we go back to when Governor Cuomo became governor of New York. And immediately the legislature said, millionaires tax, millionaires tax. He said, Sorry, I'm governor now. We can't afford the millionaires tax. Don't you understand? There are very few millionaires as compared to the rest of the population. And if we do this, they'll leave. And if they leave, they pay so much of a percentage of the taxes out there that, we can't make it. We'll have to tax the people that are left, which are the middle class and the poor. And that's no problem because they simply say, we'll tax the corporations, which again is the biggest BS out there. We're taxing the corporations. Those evil corporations will be taxed. No, it's a stealth tax on the middle class and the poor. And that's even more immoral because you're lying to your constituents and telling them, the mean companies will pay it, and you won't, where you pay all of it. You pay all of their cost. And so nothing has changed. And that's the question. What happens to these cities? I just was reading a story the other day saying the next thing is, the commercial free fall in many of these cities that, the offices are empty and people are leaving. They're not coming in. And places, for example, like in Texas or maybe even Florida, even if the commercial real estate isn't commercial anymore, they can turn those into multi-use because the population boom of people coming in from other states, mostly blue states, into Texas and Florida. So those places where the population is moving in, that commercial real estate, they at least have a chance to make into multi-purpose and keep the commercial markets, the commercial real estate market from collapsing. What are they doing to San Francisco when nobody wants just to live there anymore? When people want out? And so when I see the Dean Cain story, it's, and Mark Wahlberg, Dean Cain, Scott Baio. I couldn't think of his real name for a moment. I'll admit it. It flew out of my mind, so I just called him Chachi. But Scott, that's just symbolic of what other people are thinking. Sorry, can't afford to live here. And there's also this misnomer that somebody, they got $50 million, they can stay. And we had used way back when Phil Mickelson as an example. Now, this has got nothing to do with the live stuff. This is going back to where he said, this goes back maybe 10 years ago. He said, I'm going to move to Florida. And I believe he did move to Florida. I believe but he waited for his kids to, I think, get out of high school or whatever. But I believe he either moved or was in the process of moving. But we had said it way, 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 way back when, where, he said, the taxes, I'm going to move, and he was eviscerated. He had to back off on that. Well, I'm not going to move now and whatever. But he had to back off because there was such a blowback saying, how dare you say that? And we had said at that time, I don't know if you remember, he wanted to be a minority owner in the San Diego Padres. And you may need a couple of $100 million to do that. But we actually went through what he was making a year, what his endorsements were, because that's really where his money, if you're a professional golfer and you're famous and you've won majors, the majority of your income comes from your sponsors. But we figured if he was making, and I think that year he had made something like $100 million or something like that, and we had said, okay, you just take that figure, $100 million, and you look at the 13% income tax at that level. And you say, okay, I moved to Florida and Texas, there's no state income tax. Well, if you're making $100 million, that's $13 million. Take that over 10 years, that's $130 million. Nobody who has that money wants to give that money away. And so that whole thing, well, they're rich, they really don't care. I mean, it's not that much to them until you actually put it down to pen and paper and you say, okay, so he wants to have other investments, $130 million over 10 years, and especially if you invest that every single year is a nice piece of cash to help you get to your goal of, if he wanted to, I don't know if he wants to do it anymore, but we had stated at that time, if he wants to be a minority owner of a sports league. So don't sit there and think that because you have the money, I don't care about losing $13 million a year. Well, over 10 years, that's $130 million. Doesn't include, if you invest that properly, what you might have made on it, what you would have had at the end of that 10-year, of those 10 years. So this whole thing that the rich aren't going to move, the rich are the ones that can move. The poor are the one in the middle class that it's just so expensive to move for them. They need that upfront money to do it, unless they get a job and the company pays the moving expenses. But when I saw a couple of weeks ago, it was a California local station that had done it a year ago. They had talked about these 9 people that had moved. They went back and talked to all of those people a year later. Now, there were some that said, yeah, if I could find this and find the same job, I'd move back. And there were some that said, oh, the heat gets to me, and, oh, I liked living near the beach better. But none of them were moving right now back. And all of them were happy financially with what they were doing, and that's what matters. And plus, I've lived all over the place myself. I've lived on the beach in Florida. I've lived near the beautiful mountains in Oregon, and been, those snow-capped mountains, and hiked the mud flows of Mount St. Helens, and lived in New York and lived in Illinois. I've lived all over. Texas is a great place. I love Texas. Love living here. And as people ask me, if you're retired, and I have no plans of retiring, just to make sure you know that, would you move somewhere else? Nope, I can go visit. I like where I live. I like Texas. I love Texas. Great place to live. I've loved every place that I've lived, but this is a place that I'll stay. All right. What do we got coming up here? Oh, this is really interesting. When we talk about AI, I guess this was a study that was done, because it's in studyfinds.com. Self-driving cars may be making traffic worse because they're unable to understand human behavior. Am I the only one that sees the humor in that? Plus, Chris Christie and Trump go at it, trade insults. Pence is in. There was something else I wanted. Oh, yeah. The wildfires and climate change now. By the way, the funniest thing I read yesterday, this National Review, Luther Ray Abel. Canada must pay environmental reparations now. He's doing it tongue-in-cheek, sarcasm, but it's still a hilarious article. So that more on the way, 866-90-RED-EYE.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Got some great audio and immigration hearing yesterday in Congress, and some interesting audio we got coming up following the bottom of the hour. I just like this study, though. This is from studyfinds.com. Self-driving cars contribute to traffic congestion and could potentially be hazardous due to their inability to comprehend human behavior. A new study indicates that these autonomous vehicles, often promoted as the transportation of the future, still have a problem with understanding human beings. The ability to navigate in traffic is based on much more than traffic. Social interaction, including body language, play a major role when we signal each other in traffic. This is where the programming of self-driving cars still falls short, says Professor Barry Brown from Copenhagen's Department of Computer Science, who has been studying the evolution of self-driving car behavior on the road over the last 5 years. In a university release, he said that's why it's difficult for them to consistently understand when to stop and when someone is stopping for them, which can both be annoying and dangerous. I think what they're saying is everything has to be self-driving cars. You can't have a mixture of both. Said to address the knowledge gap, the researchers conducted an in-depth analysis of YouTube videos captured by enthusiasts testing cars from the back seat. One of these videos features a family of 4 waiting to cross a residential street in the United States. Despite the absence of a pedestrian crosswalk, the family wishes to cross the road. As a driverless car approaches, it slows down, prompting the 2 adults in the family to gesture for the car to continue. Like, you go ahead. However, the car stops next to them for 11 seconds. Then as the family starts to cross the road, the car begins to move again, causing them to leap back onto the sidewalk. The situation is similar to the main problem we found in our analysis and demonstrates the inability of self-driving cars to understand social interactions in traffic, which means you don't know what a... My first thing is this going to be the problem with AI? AI can't figure out human beings? You don't know how a human being is going to react. The driverless vehicle stops so as to not hit the pedestrians, but ends up driving into them anyway because it doesn't understand their signals. Besides creating confusion and wasting time in traffic, it can self-driving cars can be downright dangerous, said Professor Brown. In tech-focused San Francisco, autonomous vehicles have been deployed as buses and taxis in various parts of the city, negotiating the hilly streets amid people and other natural elements. These vehicles cause traffic issues and disruptions in San Francisco due to their inappropriate reaction to human beings in cars. Wow. I love that. All right, now, some scientists apply that to the problems that AI is going to have.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And I'm me. He's Eric. He's not here. I am. All right. One of the members of Congress that we think that has a great future is Representative Wesley Hunt of Texas. And yesterday they brought a bunch of people from former head of Department of Homeland Security. They brought other, liberal immigration groups in there. And so it was about what's going on at the border right now. And we have said, people say, well, things are quiet in the border. Well, that's because they're just allowing so many more people in. That's the end of Title 42 was, people say, well, there wasn't a lot of stuff. Yeah, because they've basically made arrangements. They've done a bunch of stuff. Sign in on the app, you get in. Do this, you get in. What they basically have told them is show up these sectors and you get in. If you show up those sectors, you don't get in. Show up these sectors and you get in. And that's why you've got so much problem still in New York City and Chicago and everything else. It's not going away, and that's why you also have the back and forth between Newsom and DeSantis. In fact, DeSantis responded to Newsom yesterday. I got to make sure I get that audio cut here too. Either today or tomorrow we'll get that one in. But this is Representative Wesley Hunt of Texas. And talking about the crisis at the border.
We are a nation of laws, or we are not a nation at all. We already have laws in the books that can prevent the catastrophic border crisis that we are seeing every single day today, and we know they work. And do you know how we know they work? Because they worked under President Trump. And they worked because he and his administration and you, Mr. Wolf, chose to enforce those laws. Now, is this merely a failure to act, or is this intentional? President Biden and Mayorkas act as if their hands are tied, like nothing can be done to fix this border crisis. But interestingly enough, almost every policy this administration has attempted to implement has been roughly a failure. Biden's Afghan withdrawal, Biden's foreign policy, Biden's economic agenda, failures. Except for the border crisis. The border crisis is their only success, and I say that because they have successfully created a chaotic situation to carry out a radical agenda. Problem, reaction, solution. The administration created this problem, listened to the reaction, and I suspect they will present a solution. And that solution, ladies and gentlemen, in the future will be an attempt at mass amnesty. There, I said it. The real solution would have been to prevent this crisis from happening in the first place. And the Biden administration could have done just that if we'd have kept simple laws on the books and enforced the laws of this country. Simple as that. Do you know that over 200 people on the terrorist watch list have been arrested at the border since President Biden took office? That should be terrifying for you to hear. And that's just the ones that we know of. How many have escaped into the interior of the United States? Now, I served my country in combat, and I was actually a West Point cadet when 9/11 happened. And my classmates and I stood about 60 miles north, just up the Hudson River, New York City, and watched 3,000 innocent lives evaporate from our world in 90 minutes. And my fear is that with our porous border, another 9/11 is imminent, and it will happen because this administration won't fulfill its basic responsibility. That's to secure our homeland. The Biden administration is making a deliberate choice to not secure our border. And do you know how I know this is a fact? Because 3 years ago, we weren't having this conversation. My first question is for you, Mr. Wolf. What has changed between these administrations that has caused this crisis to explode to what we've seen lately?
I think it's the intentional destruction of a lot of effective policies that were put in place during the Trump administration. Happy to name those one by one. But we've heard a lot of talk about detention capability. And what I will say is, yes, it's difficult. It's hard to detain individuals. But if you actually want to remove individuals from this country, you need to detain them. And under the Biden administration, they have removed the lowest number of individuals in, I would say, decades. 39,000 removals of criminal illegal aliens. That is a drop of over 62% from FY20, which was during COVID. So there's a lot of different policies that they have decided to tear down, very effective policies, and they did that without any analysis. They did it because they didn't like it. They didn't like the president. They didn't like whoever at the time. Let's forget about whether they were actually protecting Americans, where they were protecting American communities. And I think lost in this whole discussion is what is best for Americans on our border security policy or our immigration policy. It's not what is best for illegal aliens. It's what is best for Americans. That should be our first duty. Yes, we need to make sure that those that are coming here seeking protections that qualify for our protections under law get those protections, absolutely. But we need to think about Americans first, and I think that's where this administration is falling short.
Another question for you, sir. If you were running the Department of Homeland Security right now the same way that Secretary Mayorkas is doing right now, what do you think President Trump would have done to your job?
I would no longer be there.
I kind of tend to agree with you on that, sir. And I want people to understand this. We've had over 6 million people, illegal aliens, enter our country since Biden's taken office. 6 million. We have conceded our border to the cartels. Fentanyl has killed enough fentanyl has poured into this country to kill every single American 5 times. We have sworn enemies on the terrorist watch list in the United States, and we don't even know where they are. If President Biden does not secure this border, we're going to have another 9/11. That's how serious this is, and we must do our job and protect the American citizens. Thank you all for being here, and God bless you.
And there you go. Representative Wesley Hunt of Texas sort of lays it out. I mean, it's what we've said all along. And there were a couple of other Republicans that made it clear yesterday. This has nothing to do with Title 42. This has to do with Biden disassembling, and Mr. Wolf, who worked in the Department of Homeland Security under Trump, said that. He can go point by point by point. And as we've done that before on what the Biden administration has taken down and why this problem exists today. And the fact is, it's not going to get any better. And it is what the American people voted for, though. Now, you didn't, I didn't, but it's what the American people voted for. And this is, we've talked about this a lot, and we make sure we say maybe you didn't, but the majority of the American voters did vote for everything that we see today. And this is the biggest frustration. It isn't that we're upset. It isn't that I'm upset or Eric is upset or maybe you're upset, because the problem solving isn't there to solve problems created by nature, natural disaster, created by a war. The problem is the government is the problem. They have created the situations out there. They have its government policy that created inflation. It's government policy that created the disaster at the border. It's government policy of defund the police, which is causing the crime problems in the inner city. It is government policy that has created the homeless problems in the major cities across the United States. It is government policy that has created the rot in the FBI and the Department of Justice. And that's the problem. It's not that they can't solve problems. It's that we're paying the government officials to create the problems. So why the hell would they try to fix the problems when they created the problems? And that is the uniqueness of this administration. Why they are so unique, not in a good way, but it's why they are unique. They caused the problems, and their intent was to cause the problems. And we know that. We know that on the border. We know that with inflation. Why? Because they were told. They were told by some of their favorite economists, the Biden administration, don't do what you're doing. It's going to cause massive inflation. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And everything that we see today from the Democrats wanting to censor, wanting to get rid of the First Amendment, wanting to get rid of the Second Amendment, everything that they're doing is an attempt to tear down the United States. Energy policy, living in a delusional world. We can do it with solar and wind. No, you can't. Lying to the American public about that. Enacting a policy that will destroy America's economic, energy, and national security. Everything that they're doing is about tearing down the United States, not improving the United States. They are causing the problems. Why in the hell would they have any interest in solving the problems that they are creating? And that's where we are today. And hopefully the American people wake up. I don't know if they will. I mean, we did that survey earlier where 30% of young people want cameras in their homes so the government can monitor them. You have to look at that and say that 30% is a lost generation. That part of 18 to 29-year-olds is lost, completely lost. You're never going to get any type of critical thinking or common sense out of people that think that way. The people that have been brainwashed or intimidated to believe that biological males can be biological females because they say so, that's a lost generation unless they wake up. But that's lost. And so those are the challenges and problems that we face today. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Just quickly here, I want to read a couple of sentences. Wildfires and progressive climate change deniers. We know what the Northeast is going through. It's really incredible. Some of the scenes that you see of New York City, and some of my friends in Western New York sent me some of the pictures there. Oh, some of the sunsets are really beautiful. But because of the wildfires, and Wall Street Journal talks about it, says as of Tuesday, there were 415 active wildfires across Canada, 238 burning out of control. No doubt drought and a warm start to the summer have contributed, but the bigger culprit is poor forest management that has led fuel accumulate over decades. This hardly gets a mention in media reports, nor from anti-fossil fuel politicians. Since the Paris Accords, the four major U.S. banks, including two with headquarters in the city in New York City, with the worst tonight, have lent over $1 trillion for new fossil fuel supply projects, said New York City Comptroller Brad Lander on Tuesday. Tonight's a smoke signal that it's time for them to stop. Maybe the smoke clouded his judgment, is what the Wall Street Journal writes. The reality is, even if U.S. banks stop financing fossil fuel projects today, global CO2 emissions would rise for decades, owing to growing coal production in India and China. Another inconvenient truth is that government policies to reduce CO2 emissions will be swamped by wildfire emissions. University of California researchers last year calculated that wildfire emissions in 2020 were 2 times higher than the state's greenhouse gas reductions from 2003 to 2019. California wildfires in 2020 were the state's second largest source of CO2 emissions after transportation, and generated double the greenhouse gases of all of the state's power plants. Another study this spring in the journal Science estimated that burning forest in North America and Eurasia in 2021 released 1.7 billion tons of CO2, nearly twice as much as global aviation that year. There's also more than 4 times New York State's annual emissions and about 3 times as much as the Inflation Reduction Act's proposed reductions in 2030. Government land management policies that prevent wildfires from spreading out of control, such as prescribed burns, would reduce CO2 emissions more than offshore wind or electric vehicle mandates. But this doesn't fit with the climate left's book of revelation. Oh, man. But it's true. There you go. So, yeah, and this is where you've got, AOC was out there talking about the Green New Deal yesterday and all that. And it's like, yeah, okay. Biden, the same thing. It shows climate change. Hey, clear the force. Nope, can't do that, sorry.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.